I don't know. But that tall fellow, he had a face full of manure. That's what I call style.
Welcome to episode 23 of the Blackadder podcast, where one of us is tall and the other has a face full of manure.
I understand that you hate manure, Gerry.
I do. That's right, Biff. How are things?
Not too bad this week. How are you?
Yeah, okay. Can't complain.
Won't complain?
Yeah. Well, I could, but it wouldn't do any good.
Yeah, prepared not to complain for the purposes of recording.
Mm-hmm. Episode 3 this week of the Blackadder.
Halfway through, finally.
It feels longer.
It does. At times it does.
Mm.
It has its moments.
Yeah, this episode, it does have its moments. I think there are some high points, potentially some season high points. However, it does have the same flaw that we've discussed before, in that it starts off with some historical education that the producers felt was a requirement.
Yeah, it says it. Not only unnecessary, but not funny.
When you say it not necessary, it should have been possible to deliver the necessary information through the script.
Yeah, I think they do in this one. I just think maybe they don't have the confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Either that, or they like the device of the scroll and the screen at the start. I don't think it works well.
No, I think you're right. It's a lack of confidence, and yeah,
in the material. Yeah,
there are more sophisticated ways of and funnier ways of doing it. The other seasons had historical context, which they didn't feel required an upfront briefing before each episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe they learned from this.
Obviously,
made the same assessment.
Anyway, that's my little rant over again. Anything you wish to contribute?
Maybe just go with my summary as usual.
Crack on.
In The Archbishop, we are given a window into the brutal contest between church and state in Plantagenet, England, as King Richard and the Archbishop of Canterbury vie for the lands of a dying duke. When the Archbishop experiences a sudden and tragic accident, the king appoints his son Edmund to the role. With little interest in religion and no preparation for the work, can the Blackadder win his father's favour at last, or does a grisly end await?
Little interest, no preparation, reminds me of this podcast.
Well, there you go.
Sorry. Thanks for that, Ian. Set the scene, Ian. What's the year?
1487.
Is there a battle between anyone?
Well, as I mentioned in the summary, the church and the state are dueling for people's lands.
As you know, I don't listen to your summary.
Yeah, obviously. Neither does anybody else.
Lack of interest.
The Duke of Winchester is named as the greatest landowner in England.
What's he up to?
He's dying.
Ah, right. And that's where we begin the Duke's chambers. We see him in his last few moments as King Richard unsuccessfully attempts to get the Duke to leave his land to him, as he is having, at the same time, his bottom and nether regions threatened by the Archbishop Godfrey.
Yes, he's having us explain that if he does not sign his lands to the church, he will go to hell, where the softest bits of his nether regions are everybody else's favourite lunch.
And that's actually a pre-credit scene.
It is.
So we get the credits. And after that, where do we arrive at?
Well, I presume it's Edmund's chambers. It's that room that's never really fully defined. He's there with Baldric and Lord Percy, and they're discussing how long the Duke of Winchester can keep going. How many last legs does he have?
Yeah, Blackadder is very impatient. He wants to know the news of the Duke from Baldric. And then a returned messenger appears.
Yeah, I presume he's some kind of squire. Certainly the person playing him had no acting ability whatsoever.
We've seen him before.
Yeah, I'm sure we was about the piggy,
Yeah.
poo. Yeah.
Okay. And after there's a little struggle there, and I think at this point we get a glimpse of the future Blackadder characteristic.
There's a little bit of the conniving and the cunning coming in.
Nasty.
Absolutely. I like the little exchange with the squire, because There's a bit of confusion. Blackadder thinks it's news of the Duke of Winchester's death, but no, it's the Archbishop of Canterbury himself who has died in a tragic accident.
And Blackadder suspects the king is at it for, I think, the third time.
Yes. He asks the squire how the Archbishop died, and he says, horribly.
Mm-hmm.
And Blackadder asks if there are any details. He says, horribly is all I was given.
Harry then arrives and informs Blackadder of the specifics of this accident.
Oh, dear. Edmund, the Archbishop of Canterbury, has met with the most tragic accident. There seems to be some confusion, but I think I've fathomed out how it came about.
Yes, I think I've got a pretty shrewd idea myself.
You see, Archbishop Godfrey was coming out of the Duke of Winchester's room.
Who had just died, leaving all his lands to the church?
Well, as a matter of fact, yes.
And so the king was really after his blood, presumably.
Well, I dare say, but the point of the matter is that at that moment, round the corner came Sir Tavis Mortimer.
The king's hired killer?
No. Mortimer, that tall, rather striking fellow with no ears.
Yes, that's him.
Well, he came round the corner, saw the Archbishop, and rushed towards him with his head bowed, in order to receive his blessing, and unfortunately killed him stone dead. How? Mortimer was wearing a Turkish helmet.
Oh, I see, yes. One of those with the 2 feet spike coming out of the top?
Yes, one of those things they normally use for butting their enemies in the stomach and killing them stone dead.
Yes, so presumably he'd forgotten he was wearing it.
But do you know that's exactly what the poor fellow had done? A tragic accident. Tragic.
Ah, yes. Almost as tragic as Archbishop Bertram being struck by a falling gargoyle while swimming off Beachy Head.
And nearly as tragic as poor old Archbishop Wilfrid slipping and falling backwards onto the spire of Norwich Cathedral. Oh, Lord, you do work in mysterious ways.
We do start, like you mentioned a little bit earlier on, you do start to see some of these Blackaddery characteristics.
Yeah, he seems, in fairness to him, he's less naive, a little bit more Machiavellian perhaps. He's more aware of the political mechanisms
Yeah, but
around
more
him.
engaged and proactive, I think, as well.
Yeah, not as simpering and meek.
The simpering I couldn't be doing with her. I was glad there was much, much less of it in this episode.
There is still a little bit.
Just a little bit.
We are now in the hall where, by the fire, Blackadder, Percy and Baldric consider who will take over as the next Archbishop.
Edmund's quite confident it'll be a bishop because they usually go for religious types. But Baldric's heard something.
What's he heard?
He's heard a rumour that the king wants to appoint Harry as the next Archbishop of Canterbury. And you can understand why, because having lost out on the lands of the Duke, he might want a friendly face in situ.
And this news delights Blackadder, who realises that an archbishop's life expectancy is fairly limited, and this would make him next in line for the throne should anything happen to him.
He's very excited, and obviously they're heading to the ceremony where the next Archbishop will be named, so he has to pick his outfit.
Yeah, so he tells Percy to get him dressed, and rhymes off a
Trojan hat, Italian boots, and the black Russian codpiece which terrifies the clergy.
well, it would do. We'll talk about that shortly.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that.
So we're at the ceremony now. The clergy and royalty are there, and we get a glimpse of Blackadder's fetching strap-on.
It's ridiculous. His mother disapproves, and I also disapprove.
So do I.
It's stupid. I don't see the purpose it would serve, even if Harry was getting the job.
Yeah, I can think of one purpose, but
But not in this situation.
no. I think his mother actually gives it a bit of a slap.
Yes, she's not happy.
No.
The king, though, announces that he has consulted with the Lord God, his son Jesus Christ, and his insubstantial friend the Holy Ghost.
Yes.
And he's going to nominate his son Edwin as the Archbishop of Canterbury, which is a shock.
It certainly is.
Not least to Edmund, because it's him that he means.
But they all bow before him, and he has to use his bishop's hat to hide his phallic protrusion.
I don't understand, though, so if he didn't want folk to see it, why is he wearing it?
No idea.
Was it meant to be just to taunt Harry with? Like, nobody would be looking at him, they'd be looking at Harry, and he's
I think
taunting
Richard Curtis thought it was funny to have a strap on show.
That's stupid.
As
Immature.
I don't even know what a codpiece is. Like, what is functional? Was it to protect? Is it like a...
Protective, I guess. Yeah.
How would you wear it unless you were in battle or in some sort of activity where it was likely that you'd get a...
Yeah, if you're cricketing. I think you call it a box nowadays.
Yeah.
I presume that's the same sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, certainly. I mean, there are times where in sporting occasions you would wear it, but I don't
It's
understand.
just part of ceremonial dress. I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems why would you carry a skiing do around if you're wearing your kilt?
And why is it called a cod piece? Is it made from cod?
Probably. Let's assume so. A little bit later on, we find Harry and the King arm wrestling.
Yeah, I think this is the first of a couple of times in this episode where Harry and his dad are having a bit of man-on-man fun.
Yeah, it's done affectionately, I
Bit
think.
rough and tumble.
But gently. Because the King knows that Harry wouldn't really survive very long with him if he went full on.
Sure, but he's also happy to engage with Harry. He
He's
sees him as
training him up, I
yeah,
think.
his favourite son.
Of course.
A grovelling Blackadder enters, only to be told by his father that... that what, can you remember?
He shouldn't be confused because he has always despised him and still does.
He then compares him to what?
He says he is to his brother as excrement is to cream.
Very harsh.
And both of them thank him for the comparison.
He goes on to tell Blackadder not to try and get out of this new position, and he doesn't care that he doesn't believe in God, and warns him that if he is crossed, he will do unto him what God did to the Sodomites.
Yes, Edmund suggests that he could maybe find somebody equally weak-willed and feeble, but the King says no such man exists. At which point, Edmund simpers his way out of the room and yells flee.
Yeah, reverting back to type, I think perhaps it is in the presence of his father.
Yeah, not just his father. I think there's various people who intimidate him, but his father's one of them.
He's starting to get a bit of confidence around Percy and Baldric now, however.
And Harry as well.
Harry,
I think
yeah.
he's tougher around him.
Mm-hmm. We're outside, where the King finds Blackadder and his assortment of torture devices loaded onto a cart. Apparently, he's on his way to Canterbury.
So he says. The King approves and sends Harry with him to make sure he's not murdered before his investiture.
Yeah. The King walks off, but just as he does, Percy arrives, and he puts his foot in it.
Oh, he's an idiot.
What does he do?
Well, he asks Edmund if they're ready to head to France, and not reading the signals that that's not the plan anymore, he says, "Oh, I see, you've changed your plan." To which he is told the only change in the plan is that he should now rub his face in some manure and follow at a distance.
I hate manure.
Yeah.
So if they are actually going to France, what was the point in loading up the cart with all the torture devices?
Take him to France,
Why?
just to have.
Okay.
Don't know. Maybe he thought they might come in useful. They could sell them.
Or he has to, when he's leaving the castle, has to look as if he's actually going to Canterbury.
But then he does have to think for a second when he's asked where he's going.
They're now on the road, and as they travel, Harry quizzes Blackadder with some theological dilemmas before we see Percy and Baldric have been made to put themselves to good use.
Yeah. Edmund and Harry are riding the horses, and Baldric and Percy are pulling the cart full of torture devices, etc. And Percy has a manure-covered face.
We see a couple of peasants remark on the group. I think we heard that at the top of the podcast.
We did.
And we arrive at Canterbury Cathedral. What do we see?
Well, the King's there, and they're having the investiture of Edmund. I believe, and maybe around about this point, that they had to cut a whole series of boring sermons and things like that were originally filmed for time reasons.
So this was the funniest stuff.
Yeah, this is the top material.
The cream, as opposed to the
The
excrement.
excrement that was scraped away.
Yeah, so we see Blackadder being ordained with the help of some prodding from the King. And his first acts involve the misuse of incense.
Yeah, he's swinging it around his head rather than gently back and forth. He's nominated in a voiceover as Edmund the Unwilling.
Sometime later, Blackadder and Baldric both now have these shaved monks' heads.
Yes.
And he is still worried about the threat from his father.
Well, neither he nor Baldric really know what God did to the Sodomites, but Baldric thinks it can't be worse than what they did to each other. Is that a little homophobic joke in there?
Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, I suppose if you're not that way inclined, then it would be pretty bad.
Maybe. Anyway, a knight arrives and presents a scroll to the Archbishop.
He does indeed. I think he's dressed like the King's assassin, is that right, no?
I'm not 100% sure, possibly. He had the funny helmet on, didn't he?
Mm.
In any event, Edmund is convinced that his life is now hanging as by a thread.
Yes.
He sends Baldric for Percy right away.
We are now at the bedside of Lord Graveney, or Graveney?
Graveney, I think.
Okay. He is dying and is attended by the Bishop of London, who is the brother of the murdered Archbishop, who threatens Graveney with hell and all its hellish.
Yeah, where the air is pungent with the aroma of roasted behinds.
He is also trying to receive the land when he dies.
Yes, so he's arrived there ahead of the Archbishop and the King, and he's got the signature for the lands to be passed to the church.
But just as he signs it away, in run a very angry King and Blackadder, who managed to revive him in order to change his mind.
Yes, and they eject the bishop from the room at this stage.
Yeah, now pleased to find the Archbishop there, Graveney confesses to some of his sins, including murder, adultery and incest.
With his mother.
Yes.
Thousands of times.
Yeah. I mean, once is practically nothing.
Well, this is what Edmund is trying to explain to him, that maybe he won't go to hell, his crimes aren't so bad, but he ultimately has to concede that, yeah, he probably is going to hell, but it's not so bad there. Heaven's only good for folk who like heavenly things like talking to God and watering pot plants. Hell's for folk who like other things.
So happy at the thought of this den of vice, Graveney signs his land to the crown and then promptly dies.
He does, hoping that the Lord will treat him like the piece of refuse he is.
The king seemed genuinely, for the first time, delighted at how Blackadder handled the situation.
He does. They embrace and they each say, Father, and respond with my son.
Yeah.
Firstly as father and son, secondly as parishioner and archbishop. Did you notice Percy and Baldric in the background beating the bishop unconscious with crucifixes?
I did, yes. Back on the road, we've got a quick scene as the peasants see two knights riding at speed and have them as a pair who could kill the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Yes, there's some things in these passers-by and the scenes on the road that remind me a little bit of Monty Python and
Yes,
Holy Grail.
of course.
It's Python-esque, let's call it that, but not as good.
No. Back at the castle, what's happening?
The King and Harry, as you said earlier, are continuing their sort of horseplay, this time with swords. They end up, I think, in the middle of the dining table, at which point Harry retires and the King sits to eat with the Queen.
Who inquires after Blackadder?
The King emphasises that he's now the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the Queen says, well, the Archbishop of Canterbury is also a very naughty boy whose bottom I had to smack for relieving himself in the pond.
The King brushes this off and calls for fresh horse.
Yes, yeah, the King tries to say it's a long time ago, but the Queen points out it was last Thursday.
We then see this fresh horse being brought to him and he's eating a leg with a hoof on it.
Yeah,
but
as props go, it wasn't the most convincing, was it?
No, it wasn't convincing, but I thought it was a little bit squeamish.
Yeah.
A big horse's leg and he was chomping into it.
I thought it was a bit slapsticky. It was so absurd.
Yeah.
There's then a issue of semantics that arises.
Yes, as he toasts Blackadder's long and healthy life with the Queen, we see the riders approach. Talk to me about these semantics.
Okay, so the King explains to the Queen that he's glad he will never have to say, who will rid me of this turbulent priest?
Turbulent, yeah.
And she doesn't understand, so he explains it's something that his predecessor Henry II said about Thomas à Becket, and that this led to a couple of knights who overheard heading off to murder him, and he was the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Yep. Now, as he is explaining this, we see the knights enter the building.
The knights that we saw on the road earlier on, yes, and they only hear, who will rid me of this turbulent priest, and the clarification that it was the Archbishop of Canterbury, and they turn on their heel and leave.
In Blackadder's room in Canterbury, we see him chatting with Percy and Baldric about how they can make money from the position that they find themselves in.
Basically, there appear to be four major profit areas. Curses, pardons, relics, and selling the sexual favours of nuns.
Selling the sexual favours of nuns?
Yeah.
You mean some people actually pay for them?
Well, foreign businessmen, other nuns, you
Oh,
know.
well, let's see.
Right, well, now, this is a fair selection. Basically, you seem to get what you pay for. They run all the way from this one, which is a pardon for talking with your mouth full, signed by an apprentice curate in Tewkesbury.
How much is that?
2 pebbles. All the way up to this one, which is a pardon for anything whatsoever, including murder, adultery, or dismemberment of a close friend or relative.
And who's that signed by?
Both popes. Curses are pretty much the same, really. I got this one for half an egg.
Curse. Dear enemy, I curse you and hope that something slightly unpleasant happens to you, like an onion falling on your head.
Yeah, well, that is the bottom end of the market. They run all the way to this one for 4 ducats.
Dear enemy, may the Lord hate you and all your kind, may you be turned orange in hue, and may your head fall off at an awkward moment.
Does this work? Yeah. Really? Yes.
Really?
All I can say is that if Donald Trump's head falls off at an awkward moment, we'll know what's happened.
We mentioned the potential season high point in this episode, and I think this scene may be it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they remove the agency of the nuns, but there you go. I think it's the nuns as a concept rather than the individual women.
This scene apparently was the first time Robinson, Atkinson and McInerney gelled on screen. This is the first time that they felt themselves to be a tight unit.
Yeah, well, it takes a bit of time, doesn't it? We're only in episode 3, it's quite quick.
Yeah. But you can see them working well together.
Yeah, the
here.
timing's good and the way that the characters work together is good, yeah.
Now, with the nights fast approaching, Baldric goes on to discuss relics such as shrouds, wine, and splinters from the cross. And at that point, did you see him getting a little
splinter in his hand, yeah. He also has a number of things that Jesus made when he was a carpenter, including crucifixes, which makes no sense at all, obviously.
A horrified Percy points out that they are all clearly fakes, and not everyone can be fooled, especially someone like him who then produces a finger from the body of Jesus.
Yeah. And he's also paid a lot of money for this, but
Baldric's amazed.
yes, because he thought they only came in packs of 10.
Yes, and he shows him his sacred appendages party pack.
Percy's furious, so he's going to storm off and find the verger who sold it to him.
Indeed. But as he opens the door, what does he find?
He meets the knights.
2 sword-wielding knights at this point, who quite openly, I think they tell him, I can't remember this, but did they actually say they're there to kill?
Well, the first one says that they're here to murder the Archbishop, and the second one said various enemies.
Yeah, okay. Right.
So the first one keeps trying to give it away, maybe not consciously. The second one tries to cover up. They're both meant to be drunken knights.
Yeah. However, as the naive Percy goes to fetch Blackadder, Baldric comes out and realises the danger posed, so he rushes back in to warn Blackadder before hiding in a cupboard.
Yeah, Percy has really excelled himself here because he's been told by these 2 knights that the Archbishop's in danger because 2 drunken knights may have been sent by King Richard to kill him. He doesn't click in any way, and he's even angry at Baldric for suggesting this.
Yeah. This reminded me of season 3 when they thought there was anarchists after him, and I think Baldric hid under the table or something.
Oh, he hid somewhere. Yeah. Did you spot the Archbishop playing with the Joan of Arc relic when he was holding it up and just playing with it?
Oh, yeah.
Not when Percy came back and when Baldric came back.
Yeah. And that was similar to Blackadder 2.
Beer
Yeah.
episode, yeah. They can't find anywhere to hide and they pray before the mirror, at which point Edmund accidentally opens a secret passage through which they escape.
Where to?
Well, the knights know where they've gone. So they come in and think they're in the bed, then having stabbed the bed and realised they're not there, think, oh, they've gone in the secret passage to the nunnery. So perhaps they should have checked that a wee bit quicker. But anyway, everyone arrives at the nunnery, the knights yelling as they appear.
Yeah. And now dressed as nuns, they send the knights, who, as you have said, followed them on a wild goose chase.
The knights themselves then dress as nuns to avoid suspicion, and the 2 groups swiftly realise who is who.
Yeah, and a sword fight breaks out. Now, as this is going on, 2 real nuns decide to check in on the dorm residents and are aghast at the sight that befalls them. Now, firstly, we should say, if they're going to check on the nuns, where are the nuns that should be in there?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of them is the Mother Superior.
And
she recognises the Archbishop immediately.
And this results in Blackadder having to come up with a tall tale a short while later.
And that, sweet lady, is the whole story.
Let us go over the facts again. Having been appointed appointed Archbishop, you found that all your interest lay in the beauty of your vestments.
Ah, the fine embroidery.
Unable to resist the slide into depravity, you began to dress up in the habit of a nun.
I could not resist the texture of the Hessian under things.
Oh, I can understand that. Then you forced the Bishop of Ramsgate and one Brother Baldy to do so also.
Oh, may I be cursed for it.
And finally, you got 2 knights drunk and invited them to come and wrestle with you inside the nunnery in an orgy of heathen perversity. That's shameful tale, there's the unmistakable ring of truth. And I must therefore tell you that this morning I have written urgently to all 3 popes recommending your immediate excommunication. Never more may you be Archbishop of Canterbury.
Oh, dear.
That's enough, Sister Sarah. I think he's learnt his lesson.
I did like that, the story having the unmistakable ring of truth.
And so, a relieved Blackadder, we didn't really hear in the clip there, but he was being very gently spanked.
Very gently.
He walks into the light before grabbing his clothes and telling the waiting Percy and Baldric to move it quickly as the nunnery is on fire. We didn't see how the fire started.
Well, he walks through smoke, and I think you're meant to think it's incense or some sort of deliberate smoke, and he's like, no, it's on fire, let's go.
Okay, so it wasn't on fire.
I don't know, either that or he's just telling that to get them away from there. I don't know. It was a little bit unclear and not funny.
Yes.
Unless we've missed the joke, in which case someone will no doubt fill us in.
Yes.
After the credits, there's a little additional scene where the Mother Superior and the nun Sarah are talking, and the Mother Superior is a bit down about the events and feeling weary. And Sarah says to her that she assumes she won't be needing the unicorn tonight. The unicorn.
Yeah.
The Mother Superior agrees, and the mind boggles.
I've got one idea.
Is it suitable for broadcast?
No, let's just leave it there.
Okay. We'll avoid the jokes about one-eyed deers as well.
Yeah. And that's us.
It's a wrap. I presume Edmund will return to the king's disfavour at court, but the knights will no longer wish to kill him.
You'd have thought the king would have.
He will, but he won't do it because he's his son. For now.
But last week he was happy enough for... Was it last week for McAngus?
Yes, the fight to the death.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he would do it himself, though.
No.
Besides which, he got the lands of the Lord Graveney.
So yeah, a few scenes that were reasonable, but above average.
Yeah, I think it's a step above the first 2 episodes of the series.
Yeah. But even the best scenes in this, if they were in any of the subsequent seasons, they wouldn't be a standout.
No. I read a quote from Richard Curtis about this first season. He says that if you're doing 6 sitcom episodes, you can expect 2 to be good, 2 to be okay, and 2 to not be good, no matter how much effort you put into it. I don't think that's true in any way, because unless we've got 3 really good episodes coming up,
yeah,
and it doesn't hold true for any of the later series either.
No.
So he doesn't.
And
that doesn't make sense.
Plenty of other shows where that doesn't apply to either.
It's just the kind of thing that you say to excuse the bad episodes, I think.
It depends when he said this. Did he say it in the
I think
early
he said
80s?
it, no, I think he's saying it looking back on this series.
But he must know himself that's not true.
Yeah, no, that's
He's a
what I'm saying.
liar.
He's just covering up. It's just a way to explain away the bad episodes.
Yeah, sure, but you can only do that after season 1.
Yeah.
After you've written...
Maybe that's how you got the show renewed for season 2. Well, if you do 6, bound to be a couple of bad ones in there. The average means that we're going to get 6 good ones next season.
This episode was first broadcast on the 29th of June 1983. Let's run through some of the guest stars of this week. We have Bert Parnaby, who played Cain, one of the peasants on the roadside.
Okay.
He died in 1992, aged 68, and this was his first of 3 times playing Cain. He has also been in Casualty, Last of the Summer Wine, The Bretts, First Among Equals, Black Silk, By the Sword Divided, The Comic Strip Presents, and My Cousin Rachel. His cohort, Abel the Peasant, was played by Roy Evans, and he was born in 1930. Also his first of 3 appearances in this role.
Is this before or after he managed Liverpool?
Just before.
Okay.
He has also appeared in The Bill, EastEnders, Around the World in 80 Days, Porterhouse Blue, Casualty, Jury, Treasure Island, and he was in Doctor Who from 1965 to 74, but not continuously. I think he had perhaps about 7 or 8 appearances.
Right, recurring.
Yeah. Bill Wallace played one of the knights. We've mentioned him before. Joyce Grant played Mother Superior, died in 2006, aged 82. She's primarily a stage actress, but has appeared on the screens in Hanny, Dead on Time, which was written by Rowan Atkinson and Richard Curtis, Pardon My Genie, Keep It in the Family, and Orlando. Lord Graveney. He was portrayed by Leslie Sands and died in 2001, aged 79. Known for Z-Cars. Woof. Did you like Woof?
Don't think I've seen Woof.
No, about a boy turned into a dog. Children's ITV programme.
It does ring a bell. Maybe I did see it.
Yeah, 90s.
Okay.
Quite good. He was also in The Winning Streak, The Good Companions, Armchair Theatre, and Clough. The Duke of Winchester was played by William Russell. He was born in 1924, known for Coronation Street, Crown Court, Harriet Back in Town, Superman, The Great Escape, Hamlet, St Ives, The Adventures of Sir Lancelot and Casualty, as well as Doctor Who, where he played Ian Chesterton for 78 episodes from 63 to 65. One of the original sidekicks, what they called companions.
Yeah.
So he was the original companion to Hartnell, was it?
He was the first Doctor, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, he was one of the 4 original characters to travel in the TARDIS.
There you go. They kind of came back to that in the most recent Christmas special. They had the first Doctor in it again, but he was played by David Bradley.
Okay.
He was good.
He's also the father of Alfred Enoch, who's an actor and has starred in a lot of the Harry Potter movies.
Okay.
You like Harry Potter, not recognise the name?
Doesn't ring a bell. Who does he play?
Don't know.
Okay.
Not doing the trivia for his son.
Yeah, okay.
Apparently he was a last minute replacement for this role. It was meant to go to Wilfred Bramble, who walked off the set after becoming impatient with delays in shooting. Wilfred Bramble was from Steptoe Son, the old boy.
Right. Oh well. His loss. Or not, as the case may be.
What do you have for us?
Okay. Do you want to do favourite lines first?
Sure, I think my favourite line is the 10 appendages party pack.
Mine was the insubstantial friend, the Holy Ghost.
Okay.
In terms of trivia, a couple of little things. This episode won an international Emmy, believe it or not.
Oh, must have been a dry year.
That's probably true. The other thing, it's a wee bit longer one. Brian Blessed, you might recall in the previous episode, he returned from the Crusades and he burst into the throne room and he made a bit of a mess.
I do indeed.
Apparently in the filming of that, he threw a pillar of some kind and it knocked over some elderly actors. And the crew were unhappy about it. So when it came to this episode, he's got a door to break down when the Duke is dying. Oh no, the Lord Graveney's dying later on. Only they made it a little bit stauncher this time. So I've got a quote from Brian Blessed about this.
Okay.
The profanity warning.
Are you going to do it in the style of...
I'm not going to do it in Brian. You only had one take, and I had to literally break down this 3-inch steel door. And I'm powerful. I bench press 400 pounds. Rowan nearly lost the use of his legs with laughter, as I had to actually fucking break open the door and half of the set to get in.
Well done. Do you want me to beep that for you?
You could do for family friendly, I guess, yeah.
We'll see. We're not that family friendly.
We'll see what happens. It's a quote. You're allowed to use it when you're quoting somebody.
Certainly artistic purposes. Very good, Ian. Yeah, that was quite good. But I did only have one take.
Well, we've talked about this in previous series. It's very much been a show that's done to a budget. And they don't have a lot of takes or a lot of time.
I suppose also...
Once he's broken the door.
You can't rebuild it very easily.
No, but it does sound hilarious that he's expecting this bit of plywood and he's got a 3-inch steel door.
Yeah, that's quite good. And he's the type of guy who wouldn't, a lot of actors after the first attempt or the first shoulder charge would say, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But he's obviously feels an ego thing.
Through,
I'm going to get this door down. I also thought that he looked like someone from The Cure today.
With his massive afro going on, yeah.
Well, yeah, his hair was as if it was combed back and he had goth style
makeup,
mascara and that type of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was quite a good look, quite strong.
Yeah, it's okay. Next week we've got the Queen of Spain's beard, apparently.
Yeah, in some sources you might find it listed as the second episode. But
yeah, we discussed that before, I think.
We talked about that already, yeah.
Okay, so we can chat about that next time. Until then,
Cheerio.
bye bye.